Hello, I'm Greg Dorey. I'm Sub-Treasurer, that is Chief Executive, of the Honourable Society of the Inner Temple, commonly known as Inner Temple. So greetings from London, and I'm really pleased to have been invited, courtesy of our esteemed honorary bencher Tom Layton, to present to the Warren E. Burger Inn of Court on the origins and history of our inn, and also on the role that we play today in the legal profession of England and Wales. Inner Temple is one of the 4 remaining Inns of Court, which were founded here in the City of London approaching 700 years ago. For the first few centuries of their existence, the Inns of Court and Chancery constituted one of the most influential and largest law schools the world has ever known. They helped to create the common law and later to modernise and maintain it. They were a sort of finishing school for the sons of gentry, and they also prepared lawyers who wished to become court advocates, that is, barristers. The casual observer might think that very little has changed since, but the casual observer would be very wrong. Now, as then, barristers first have to join an Inn of Court before they can qualify. Most barristers these days are self-employed, which means that they're reliant on their clerks to negotiate fees and to arrange briefs. There are some 2,000 barristers operating within the Inner Temple these days, operating from some 44 buildings which are maintained and owned by Inner Temple. They have historic names such as King's Bench Walk, Hare Court, Crown Office Row, Paper Buildings. They're clustered around our Treasury building and Hallen Library and the Temple Church, and also our magnificent 3-acre garden, which is the largest in the City of London. But when the temple was founded originally, some 9 centuries ago, the principal inhabitants were not barristers at all. They were a brotherhood of armed and celibate monks, the Knights Templar, founded in the 12th century to protect pilgrims in the Holy Land. They became a hugely powerful and influential order. Following their custom, by 1162 the Knights Templar had built a round church here in the temple, based on the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem as their headquarters in London. This became known as the Temple Church, often known as the Mother Church of the Common Law. Following the addition of a nave, Temple Church was consecrated in 1185, 30 years before the sealing of Magna Carta. We've been closely associated with Magna Carta and its legacy ever since. Put simply, Magna Carta, or the Great Charter, is one of the most important documents in history. It established the principle that no one, not even the king, is above the law, and it guaranteed individual rights to people, the right to a fair trial and the right to justice. It's been a foundation for constitutions throughout the common law world and an inspiration for the US Constitution and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And it was here in Temple Church that the preliminary charters and negotiations which led up to Magna Carta were negotiated, and here, in January 1215, where the barons first confronted King John with the demand that he subject himself to rule by a charter. The hero of the time was William Marshal, the Earl of Pembroke, and known as England's greatest knight. He mediated between King John and the barons. He was one of the main negotiators of Magna Carta, and he was the king's advisor at Runnymede, where it was sealed. When King John died, William Marshal became guardian to the boy king Henry III and to the kingdom. He reissued Magna Carta under his own seal in 1216 and 1217, hence ensuring its survival, and he is buried here in Temple Church, where his effigy still lies. The Knights Templar took advantage of their special privileges to establish a treasury here at the temple, and this progressively became an important financial centre. It was around this time that lawyers first came here, as advisors to what was becoming an important international organisation. After the abolition of the Knights Templar in 1312, the lawyers gradually took over the site and the buildings. They formed themselves into two societies, Inner Temple and Middle Temple, names that we learn from a yearbook of 1388. There were many medieval inns of court, of which 4 remain, Gray's Inn and Lincoln's Inn, as well as Inner Temple and Middle Temple. They provided accommodation for practitioners of the law and their students, and facilities for education and dining. They were on a model very similar to the colleges of Oxford and Cambridge. The term Inns of Court was adopted in the 15th century, signifying communities of those who worked with the courts, and inn, of course, implying hospitality. By the end of the 16th century, the inns had largely developed into their present form, with new buildings being constructed to accommodate the growing membership. In connection with their educational routine, the inns developed a graduation system, and since Tudor times, the degree of barrister has been a necessary qualification for practice at the Bar of England and Wales. We call this graduation Call to the Bar, and the bar was once a physical barrier across the middle of a court. The Inner Temple was, as it is now, governed by a president called the Treasurer, who usually serves for 1 year, and a parliament of benchers, also known as bench table, elected from eminent barristers and judges. The inns also elect honorary benchers, academic benchers, and royal benchers to support different areas of our work according to their skills and experience. The inn is administered by a salaried sub-treasurer, myself, and a substantial team of experienced staff. Despite the development in the 16th century, the inn's position as tenants of the land was still insecure. To protect what they had built up from any future whims of the Crown, they petitioned King James I for a more satisfactory arrangement. And on 13th of August 1608, the King granted the 2 inns a royal charter giving them use of the temple in perpetuity, on condition that the lands be used for the education and accommodation of those studying the law, and that they maintained the fabric and services of Temple Church. The preservation of the church also remains the happy responsibility of Inner and Middle Temple to this day. Nowadays, the church's pews face each other rather than the altar, with the members of the 2 inns sitting on their respective sides and facing each other in everlasting amity. Business in the inns continued at a low level throughout the English Civil War, but it came to a standstill in the Plague and subsequently after the Great Fire of London over the period 1665 to 66. The fire was stopped at Inner Temple, but many buildings were destroyed, and a series of subsequent fires and the 20th century Blitz were responsible for further losses. The best preserved chambers buildings in the Inner Temple, which date from the 17th century, can be found in the fine terrace at the east end of the site, known as King's Bench Walk. The 18th century is regarded as an era of greater stability, although some have suggested perhaps of genteel decline. Charles Lamb, who was born in Crown Office Row in 1775, painted a loving picture of the temple of his youth in his essay, The Old Benchers of the Inner Temple. If he is to be trusted, the benchers of the time were a very singular body of individuals. Sir Joseph Jekyll, treasurer in 1816, similarly wrote of his elderly fellows as fogrums, opposed to all modern fashions, including newfangled comforts. The decrepit state of some of the benches was matched by that of the gloomy alleys and decaying buildings. Charles Dickens, in Pickwick Papers, wrote of the temple's sequestered nooks, comprising for the most part low-roofed, mouldy rooms, where innumerable rolls of parchment, which have been perspiring in secret for the last century, send forth an agreeable odour, which is mingled by day with the scent of the dry rot, and by night with the various exhalations which arise from damp cloaks, festering umbrellas, and the coarsest tallow candles. Thankfully, I observe, much of the inner temple was rebuilt between 1830 and 1900, replacing Restoration elegance and Dickensian quaintness with Victorian stolidity. The most successful of the rebuilding projects, though it resulted in the demolition of the little 14th century hall, was the new Hallen Library, designed in a perpendicular style and opened in 1870. The 20th century brought significant changes in the size and composition of all 4 Inns of Court. The membership was widened to include law students from every corner of the empire and, after 1919, women. The first woman barrister, Ivy Williams, was called to the bar by the Inner Temple in 1922, and the number of benches has risen from around 30 in 1850 to over 600 in 2020, of whom some 350 are our governing benches. The 20th century also sadly brought the catastrophe of war to the temple. Not only did many members lose their lives in the services during 2 world wars, but in 1940 to 41, almost half the temple was demolished by bombing. Some of these buildings were restored after the war to their original appearance, but the devastation also provided an opportunity for change, including to the main hall and treasury building, which were rebuilt in the 1950s. In 2008, the Inner Temple and Middle Temple celebrated the 400-year anniversary of the Royal Charter, and we were honoured to receive a re-signed charter presented by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. The temple's relationship with the New World goes back a very long way. The central figures in the Virginia expeditions, Raleigh, Amadus and Gosnold, and the constitutional draftsmen, Coke or Cook, Popham and Sands, were all members of Inner or Middle Temple. Later in the 17th century, the temple's lawyers could be found drawing up the constitutions for the early colonies. Links with America have been strong ever since. 6 members of Inner and Middle Temple signed the Declaration of Independence, and 7 the Constitution. US Chief Justice Roberts is a bencher of Middle Temple, and Supreme Court Associate Justice Stephen Breyer and retired Associate Justice Anthony Kennedy are benchers of Inner Temple. The American Bar Association was among those who generously contributed to the restoration of Temple Church after the Second World War, and we think of it as the ABA's church in London to this day. This then is the traditional and much-loved view of the Inner Temple, steeped in history, courtesy and independence. However, for those of us who work at the Inner Temple these days, there's quite another view of a progressive, modern and efficient organisation. The Inner Temple today is a not-for-profit, unincorporated membership association with charitable status. We have over 12,000 qualified members, including judges, barristers, both practising and non-practising, pupils and students. We have regulatory duties in respect of our members for admission, call to the bar and conduct and discipline. Each year, some 400 students apply to join the Inn with the intention of training for the bar. Education remains our core role. We organise a vast annual programme of education and training and networking and social events for members at all stages of their professional careers and beyond as well. Our training courses, including those on the art of advocacy, are among the best available and taught by leading practitioners in their field who give their time pro bono. At the time when this is being recorded, our full educational offer is online because of coronavirus. At normal times, though, our collegiate approach to learning and social activities encompasses all of our members, from the most junior student to the most senior Supreme Court judge. And it provides plentiful opportunities to consult each other and learn from those more experienced in both formal and informal settings. We have a world-class law library dating back to 1506. The library supports the information and research requirements of members of all four Inns of Court, as well as offering training in legal research. It holds a comprehensive collection of English legal materials, as well as specialist Scottish and Commonwealth collections, and a suite of computers for legal research via a range of subscription databases, all hosted in peaceful and beautiful oak panel surroundings with views across our gardens. The Inn offers a range of membership services too, such as support for student and barristers' mental health and well-being, a vital element of which is a free confidential telephone support and counselling service. We're also a promoter of the bar, nationally and internationally, with members in some 30 jurisdictions overseas, ranging from the United States to Uzbekistan, from Malta to Malaysia, and from Brunei to Bangladesh. Our alumni have included Mahatma Gandhi and Prime Minister Nehru of India, the first constitutional monarch and Prime Minister of independent Malaysia, and Suret Sikama, the first President of Botswana. On top of this, we're a successful property company in the heart of legal London, managing the challenges of providing modern office chambers accommodation and the best IT systems within a collection of historic buildings. The income derived from our property rents, as well as from our commercial events, is fed straight back into our work in supporting our members and the profession. For example, in 2019, we spent £5 million in total on education. Much of this, £2 million in 2020, goes on scholarships to those seeking a career at the bar, including awards to assist students or pupils who have a disability. The Inner Temple's vision for the future is exemplified in a building project we call Project Pegasus, after our symbol and logo, and you can see the work happening behind me as we record this. The project began in spring 2019 and it's due to be completed in summer 2021. This important redevelopment will transform the Inner Temple to ensure it can continue to deliver its educational mission through the creation of modern, purpose-built educational facilities, including a lecture theatre and training rooms, to match the world-class training which it already delivers. It will also give the opportunity for extensive modernisation and upgrading of our hall and treasury building for the first time since the post-Second World War reconstruction. This revitalisation of the Inn will ensure that members and other people who use the Inn have the right services and facilities to support a vibrant legal profession. The Inns of Court all offer broadly similar services to members these days, but the details and ethos can differ. Inner Temple is often referred to as the progressive inn, thanks to our forward-thinking approach and our commitment to social mobility. We've been running outreach activities to underrepresented groups for a good decade, and we operate several programmes which encourage widening access to the bar, including the Schools Project and the Pegasus Access and Support Scheme, or PASS. In recognition of our work in these areas, we were ranked as one of the top 75 UK employers in the Social Mobility Employer Index for the third year running in 2019. The Inn also won in the Best Talent and Inclusion Initiative category in the Lawyer Awards 2020 for the PASS scheme. Public legal education is going to be a major growth area for us. In short, we're an inn with a global membership that's ever progressive in strengthening and promoting the rule of law and a diverse, vibrant legal community. Led and shaped by the profession, for the profession, we're dedicated to attracting the very best candidates and ensuring that everyone, at every stage of their career, has access to excellent education and training resources so that they can develop and thrive. So steeped in tradition, yes, but also highly relevant to the 21st century. Thank you for listening.